everyone, it's Maive. Welcome to our first day of Christmas tutorial. Oh, I'm so excited. Today we'll be making a quiet London street at Christmas in miniature that you can light up at night and decorate your home with. I'll leave a very long list of materials in the description. For the house I used black polymer clay, but you can use any color you want. And after tracing the template I made, I trimmed all the excess clay. I made 3 terraced houses, but it's up to you how many houses you want to make. Then using a small bowl tool I scored the windows and doors. That way I knew where to cut out the windows and where to texture the clay. Then using a knife cut out the windows if you want them to be see-through. I scored the outline of the door so I knew I didn't have to texture the clay in that area, and using a toothbrush I added general texture. To make the bricks, I first used the blunt side of my blade to create even lines to make sure the bricks were straight. Then using a pointy tool and all the patience in the world, I traced all the bricks one by one, and as you can imagine, this takes a few hours to complete. Next I filled in the windows with a mix of fimo liquid and yellow soft pastels, but you could mix the liquid clay with a speck of yellow clay or oil paint. I'm not sure what other clays you could get away with using because I don't know how translucent they are, but fimo liquid, as far as I know, is the most translucent one. Next you want to make the sides and the back of the houses in the same way, and for the back I used the same template, only I made 4 windows instead, but you can make as many as you want, and as before you want to cut them out, texture the clay and add the yellow mix. I used yellow because I think it makes the house look really warm and cozy when it's lit up. After baking the walls for 15 minutes and letting them cool down, I dry brushed them with white acrylic paint first to make the colour stand out. It's important that you don't get any paint in the grooves, or at least to get the least amount possible, so you get a nice contrast with the black background. Once you've painted all the walls white, you can go ahead and paint them any colour you want. I chose a pretty standard brick shade because I knew that the street was going to be grey and I wanted the roof to be grey as well, so I didn't want everything to be too dark, but of course you can paint it any colour you want. I also applied a small amount of a tan or beige colour so that the bricks didn't look all the same. Next I applied a bit of fimo liquid on the area where the doors would be so I could stick the clay. And I chose my doors very colourful because I just love them, especially the red one. And after adding the clay I added some detail and I added some columns around them. You can basically add anything that you think makes them look like London houses, and I suppose it's not going to be the same for everyone. Then I moved on to making the arches just above the windows, and I made them both on the front and back walls. Once I'd done all the arches, I baked them again for 15 minutes at 110 degrees Celsius. Next I cut a rectangle out of black clay to fit a wooden board I had previously made from lolly sticks, and I used fimo liquid to bond the two together. Then I spread fimo liquid on the base of the walls and pressed them into the clay. Make sure the walls are straight and that there's plenty of room for an LED tea light if you want to light up your houses. Then trim the clay you don't need, add some texture and sculpt the stones in the curve. I'm using a flat silicone tool, but a pointy tool or toothpick would also help. Once I'd done all the stones, I baked it for 20 minutes. To support the walls, I glued a wooden stick in each inner corner of the building, and you have to let them dry completely before adding anything to the houses just so you don't knock the walls out of place. In the meantime, I painted the pavement white, always using acrylic paint, then a soft brown on the outer half and dark brown on the edges. To make a template of the roof, the building needs to be assembled so you know how long it needs to be, and as you can see, I made mine a little longer than the building. Then you want to cut out the shapes and texture them in the same way as we did for the walls. Once you're happy with the look, bake them for 20 minutes. To make a simple pillar box, I cut out a cylinder from red clay, then flattened the ball, placed it on top and baked it for 10 minutes before adding a strip of black clay around the bottom half or so of the pillar. To make the base for pine trees, I shaped green clay into cones with a flat base and also baked them for 10 minutes. While those were baking, I finished the corners of the building with black clay, sculpted the bricks and textured them with a toothbrush. Don't forget to do all 4 corners. I used a small square of black clay to make the front steps, and once I had trimmed the overall length, I used a blade to cut out a step. Then you want to tidy up the shape and repeat for the other 2 doors. I trimmed a toothpick and spread fimo liquid on one end, then put it through a ball of black clay to make the base of a Victorian lamppost. Shape the clay so that it's wider at the base and then at the top using black clay too. Then add the bases for the trees and the pillar box so that the people living in your houses can send their Christmas cards, and bake all again for 15 minutes. Once cool, I drilled holes out front using a nail nut drill, and I did this so I could glue pieces of wire into the holes and build little gardens. I use head pins, so I had to trim the heads off, but you can use any other wire as long as it's not too bendy. Trim the wire into little pieces and super glue them to the holes. You might want to give them a little push or a tap to make sure they're in as far as they can go. Once you've glued all the pieces of wire and the glue is dry, you can finish off the front using black clay. Add a piece of green clay inside the garden and use a pointy tool to texture it. To sculpt the pine trees, I first spread fimo liquid on them, wrapped a strip of green clay around them, then using a flat tool, I pushed the clay into the pre-baked base, making sure the clay is wider at the base. Now you can use a dotting tool to finish texturing the clay and keep adding strips of clay and repeating the process till you get to the top. To make bushes around the building, I first spread fimo liquid so that the baked clay and the unbaked clays stuck together, then placed small balls of dark green clay along the base of the wall, and using a pointy tool I poked lots of tiny holes into the clay to texture it. To bond the 2 sides of the roof, I used liquid clay and a strip of black clay which I textured with a toothbrush, and I baked the roof on the house so it stayed in place. Once cool, I glued a wooden stick inside the roof for extra support, making sure it was shorter than the inside length of the building so it still fitted. While the glue was drying, I finished the garden fences with black clay and added a Christmas wreath on each door. Then baked it for 10 minutes. Next, I added the chimneys to the roof, and using the same flat tool, I traced the lines for the bricks. But to define each single one, I used a pointy tool. I gave them texture with a toothbrush, and once the main building was cool, I added a mix of black clay and fimo liquid on the fences to strengthen them, but also to cover up the joints. After baking everything one last time, I painted the roof white first and then a bluish grey. I used black paint to shape the curb, and for the snow I used Weepam cold porcelain. You can also make cold porcelain at home. You can find the tutorial in the top right corner of this video or in the description. To stick the cold porcelain to the scene, I brushed on a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue, but you can use any kind of PVA glue, and I gave it texture using a dotting tool. Now you can go ahead and add snow wherever you want. I chose this type of clay because first of all, it looks a lot like snow because it's slightly translucent, and second because you can add a little bit at a time and you don't have to bake it every single time that you change or that you add something, so I thought that was quite handy and all you have to do is wait. I painted the lamppost black and the lamp yellow after painting it white so it looked warm. I also painted the wooden sticks inside the building and in the roof black to disguise them, and using white acrylic paint I added the last few details on the bushes and trees so they looked still a bit frosty or snowy. I painted the fences black, and once all the paint was dry I glazed everything with gloss water-based varnish. If you liked this tutorial, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Maive and I'll be posting Christmas tutorials for the next 11 days, so go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow for a second day of Christmas tutorial. Bye! Ciao ciao!